Hi guys! Happy National Women's Equality Day. I'm Samuel Moser and welcome to Moser Meadows Records. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not in my usual studio. This is my brother's bedroom.
This isn't my bedroom. This is your studio.
The reason I'm here instead of my usual studio is Puzzle was out and didn't need this room today, and I wanted a different environment and a different point of view to work from, so I asked Puzzle and he gave me permission to do it here. The next one will be back in my studio. Today I'd like to talk with you about my song, E.I.O. Anyone who's known me for at least a year can probably tell that I self-identify as a philosopher. If you've been subscribed to my channel that long and watched all my videos, you can probably tell as well. I don't have a degree in the study of modern philosophy or philosophy history. The term philosophy comes from two Greek words, philo, which has to do with the love of something, and sophia, which has to do with wisdom. So philosophy really has to do with a love of wisdom, and so philosophers are people who love and pursue wisdom. However, people who pursue it are frequently misunderstood and thought to be quite annoying. Most annoying kinds of people on the planet. Kind of like a horsefly buzzing around, biting people non-stop. That was how Socrates was viewed, for all the nagging questions he asked. Yet we look up to him today for his ideas and the way he asked people questions and using their own reasoning got them to think about things that they otherwise wouldn't have thought of. Philosophers, these thinkers, have a way of looking at everything, often in a way that really annoys people. A lot of the time I like to pretend I don't know anything in order to make room for a lot of new ideas without letting old ideas get in the way. Kind of set my presuppositions aside and make room for another point of view, another opinion, willing to pick up my presupposition again if it still holds water. I like to imagine that philosophers are the people who had their normal human brains removed to make room for special knowledge, and maybe that's the reason their statues usually seem to have empty eyes. Many of these people were poor, and at least a few of them didn't have an education. They didn't have to have degrees for us to look at them now and say, I know them. They're philosophers. They were simply the people we remember who tried to figure out the bigger answers to everything around them. I had the idea for a song E.I.O. before I wrote the words. I grew up on nursery rhymes and thought, I can't make a bunch of songs about farms and never use the chorus that the most famous one uses. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. But the meaning of E-I-O was taking me a while to dissect. I knew this song would be more about my worldview, but I wasn't sure what the letters E, I, and O had to do with that. Well, I thought, some of the earliest philosophers used to try to figure out what three elements make up everything: water, earth, air, fire, water, dirt. But then as I wrote the verses, I realized this song had nothing to do with that. And even if it did, I couldn't figure out what E would be, what I would be, and what O would be. Then I decided, thinking from the context of Old MacDonald, where E-I-O was originally used, what it maybe meant there. The way I looked at it, E-I-O is an exclamation like, woe is me, I have too many animals. I talked about that a little in my commentary on Killed by a Clock. So for the sake of the song, E-I-O is an exclamation of stress and weariness with trying to figure life out. I used to worry that it was possible that everything I experienced is only a dream, and the real me is out there somewhere, still asleep and dreaming, and when he wakes up, I'll be gone. Actually, I came to wonder whether existence itself was a dream, and nothing was ever really there at all. The thinker and mathematician René Descartes helped me out by his statement, I think, therefore I am. I heard that as, come on, if I'm able to think of this whole thing, there must be a me to think it. So I'm confident that I exist. I still think sometimes though, maybe in a sense, we aren't really awake. I mean, I go through my day and experience things one way, while another person, the same day, sees a glimpse of me going through my day. Only a glimpse. And on it goes. Someone else sees him, someone else sees her, someone else sees her. All from different points of view. Who's the main character of this story? Maybe there's just one person dreaming the whole thing. The philosopher Plato suggested this life is like a cave we're living in, and we are prisoners who only see shadows of the real life outside. Some people have a pie-in-the-sky concept that we will be rewarded at the end in another life for enduring this one. To me, it's like saying, play in the mud and make fake pies. You'll get to find out what real pie is like in heaven. I'm thinking it'll be ice cream. But anyway, an idea, still, that there's a real life out there, and we're just living in a fake one. Some of you may be thinking, I knew it! He's lost it. Must have been some stressful situation with a goat when he was little. Thanks, Freud. But no. It's normal for people to think philosophers are crazy, but every philosopher was at some point thought to be insane. Yet it wasn't for lack of knowledge, so much as for asking questions people hadn't yet explored or weren't willing to explore. And yes, I know some philosophers have gone crazy for never finding a solution, never getting clear answers, and still wondering why the world had to go on existing with those questions still hanging above them. I used to worry about that happening to me. What calms me down is knowing there is an answer. Sometimes I ask myself, is it possible a thing which is puzzling me is nothing? Another person might say, yeah, it's nothing, move on. But then reason comes and bites me like an annoying bug saying, if it's nothing, why has it been nagging you your whole life? It's clearly something, or it would leave you alone. If it was nothing, it couldn't leave you alone, because there'd be no it to leave you alone. I get comfort in hearing someone else ask the same questions. Why is everything only seen from my perspective? Why don't I get someone else's? King David said, I do not concern myself with great matters, or things too wonderful for me, but I have calmed and quieted myself. I am content. He's able to look at himself and say, I guess I don't have to figure everything out. I know there's someone else who already does know everything and already does have everything figured out. I believe there is a God who has all the answers. I believe that the reason there are so many questions is so that when we keep pursuing them, they eventually lead us to God. I believe it was God's Son who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Anyone who seeks him will find him. It's because of that that I encourage people with questions to keep asking them, that you will find what you are looking for. Were I to pretend I didn't have those questions anymore, I'd still be stuck in Plato's cave, acting along with the shadow puppets. The more honest I am with other people about my questions, the more I sometimes hear them asking the same things. While alone with my thoughts, I feel like I'll go crazy. But realizing there's other people with their own worldviews helps me know that I can struggle with these questions and still be okay with not having the answers. Even though there are parts of it that are difficult, at least I'm out of the cave and I can play the game that we call life. As I mentioned earlier, I wrote the music for EIO long before I had a poem. I want it to be the song that opens my album, Don't Break a Goat's Heart. As it opens with that bass music, dum da dum da dum da dum da dum, it made me think of going through dark blue clouds and looking for something. However, it also made me think of the start of the Gumby movie that begins in space and zooms in on a clay world. Not entirely sure why it made me think of that. But the rest of the music made me think of a game, and I wanted to tie in some nostalgia from the farm I grew up on, Moser Meadows. How was I going to tie those things together? Well, while I've shown you a lot of the outside of Moser Meadows in my music videos, such as the house, the goat pens, the pond, the back patio, and the duck pens, you haven't seen much of the inside of the house. The biggest room was what we called the great room, and it had a dark blue carpet. Sometimes when I was little, I used my imagination staring at the blue carpet and thinking of it as a dark ocean, or clouds, or outer space. So, what if I had an imaginary world appearing in an imaginary space with imaginary clouds so that the space was actually the carpet and the world was actually a game I was playing? That fit in well with the theme of the song, since the main character feels like he may be the imagination of the real main character or a game piece played by the main character. Next, my brother Josiah, one I've mentioned before who helped me redesign Rock and Roll, Tommy the Cowboy, and Blow-Nose Billy, Josiah mentioned that the music at the start of the song sounded somewhere between 70s disco and 70s arcade game. Well, I hadn't really done anything 70s style yet, so I decided for the video I should delve into a cartoon style, drawing inspiration from the 60s, 70s, 80s, specifically getting ideas from the 70s and 80s games like Twister, arcade games, and Scattergories. My mom had a pinball machine she kept in one corner of the great room. In the other corner of the great room, we kept games like Boggle Jr. in a little wooden drawer by our cassette tapes. So I was getting a nostalgic idea, though I hadn't determined what kind of game I wanted my music video to be centered around. I already knew when I wrote the music that I wanted it to end like a pinball game, with a hay bale chasing me. So it was intentional that I made the music sound that way there. I decided not to decide on one game, but instead include all the games at once. Besides, in the song, I'm looking at the world from different points of view. Based on one worldview, life may look like a board game, with a spinner. To another, it may be like a video game. And still to another, it may be more like an arcade game. So changing it up in the video also helps get this idea across. I know this video was probably a lot. If you still have questions about the cartoon, the song, or maybe something I said in the commentary, drop your question in the comments below. And I will see you next time. And I will see you next time. And I